My name is Alex Thompson, and I'm an urban explorer with a passion for uncovering the hidden stories of forgotten places. My blog, Urban Shadows, has a small but dedicated following, thanks to my detailed accounts and eerie photographs of abandoned asylums, ghost towns, and other relics of the past. I've always been drawn to the unknown, to places where civilization has left its mark, but nature has reclaimed its territory. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. It all started with a late-night internet dive. I was browsing through forums dedicated to urban exploration when I stumbled upon a thread that caught my eye. The Lost Tribes of the Smokies, fact or fiction? The poster, going by the username Mountain Ghost, claimed that deep within the Great Smoky Mountains, there were communities of people who had abandoned modern society, living like animals forgotten by time. They were called the Feral People, rumored to be descendants of Native Americans who evaded capture during the Trail of Tears, intermingling with escaped slaves and other outcasts over centuries. At first, I laughed it off as another internet myth, something to scare city folks like me. But the more I read, the more intrigued I became. There were eyewitness accounts from hikers who claimed to have seen them, wild-eyed figures watching from the trees, strange markings on trunks, and even reports of missing persons linked to the area. One name kept coming up: Dennis Martin, a 4-year-old boy who vanished in 1969 while on a family camping trip in the Smokies. Despite extensive searches, he was never found, and some believe he was taken by these feral people. I also found a TikTok video titled, "The Feral People of the Smokies, They're Real." It showed shaky footage of a dense forest, with the narrator whispering about hearing strange noises and seeing figures in the distance. The comments were filled with similar stories. Hikers chased, campers finding their gear tampered with, and a few who swore they saw human-like creatures watching them. The video had gone viral, fueling modern fascination with the legend. Skeptical but curious, I decided to investigate. I planned a solo hiking trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, choosing to start from the Gatlinburg Trail Trailhead. Known for its access to both popular and remote trails, my goal was to hike toward the Appalachian Trail, but venture off into less traveled paths where the feral people were rumored to dwell. I told my friends I was going to disconnect for a week, but I didn't mention the real reason. I didn't want them to worry or try to talk me out of it. As I drove into Tennessee, the landscape transformed from rolling hills to towering mountains covered in dense forests. The Smokies lived up to their name. A hazy mist hung over the peaks, giving them an otherworldly appearance. I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as I approached the park. Cell service dropped off miles back, and the only sounds were the crunch of gravel under my tires and the occasional call of a bird. I arrived at the trailhead in the late afternoon and set up camp near a small stream, pitching my tent under a canopy of trees. The sound of water trickling over rocks was soothing, but as night fell, the forest came alive with unfamiliar noises. Owls hooted, insects chirped, and somewhere in the distance, I heard a howl, long and mournful, not quite like a wolf, but not entirely human either. It sent a shiver down my spine, but I chalked it up to my imagination and eventually drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I woke to find something unsettling. On a flat rock near my tent, there was a pile of small bones, picked clean, possibly from a rabbit or squirrel. Beneath them were carvings, crude symbols etched into the rock, unlike any trail markers I'd seen. They looked like warnings or territorial claims. I took photos with my camera, my heart racing. but I was determined to press on. I packed up and started my hike, following the trail deeper into the wilderness. The path grew narrower, overgrown with vegetation, as if nature was reclaiming it. I decided to veer off the main trail, following a faint game path that wound uphill toward the Cove Mountain Trail. The trees here were older, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I noticed more of those strange carvings on tree trunks, lines and symbols that seemed to form a pattern, though I couldn't decipher it. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, but every time I turned around, there was nothing there. By midday, I stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. It was falling apart, with moss growing on the walls and the roof caved in. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped inside. The air was damp and musty, and the floor creaked under my weight. There was little left: a broken chair, a rusted pot, and a child's doll with a cracked porcelain face, its one remaining eye staring blankly. But what caught my attention was a leather-bound journal on a splintered table. I opened it to find neat handwriting. The first entry dated 10 years ago. Day 1. Started my hike today. The weather is perfect, and the scenery is beautiful. I'm excited to see what I find. The entries detailed a hiker's journey through the Smokies, but the tone grew darker. They mentioned feeling followed, hearing voices at night, and seeing figures in the distance. The final entry, dated 5 years ago, was chilling. Day 7. I think I'm lost. I've been walking for hours, but I can't find the trail. I hear them again, those voices, whispering in a language I don't understand. They're getting closer. If anyone finds this, please don't come looking for me. They don't want us here. My heart pounded. This journal likely belonged to one of the missing hikers I'd read about. I tucked it into my backpack, intending to hand it over to the park rangers. As I left the cabin, I heard a twig snap behind me. I spun around, but the forest was silent, too silent. I decided it was time to head back to camp, but when I tried to retrace my steps, the game path had vanished. The underbrush seemed to have closed in, and my compass spun wildly, as if caught in some magnetic interference. Panic set in. I was lost in the Smokies, with night falling and no way to contact anyone. As darkness enveloped the forest, the howls returned, closer now, almost surrounding me. Then, through the trees, I saw flickering lights, torches or fires. Drawn by desperation and curiosity, I crept toward them, unaware that I was walking into a nightmare. I moved cautiously, hiding behind trees and bushes as I approached the source of the lights. The flickering grew brighter, and soon I could make out shapes, figures moving around a large fire pit in a clearing. There were at least a dozen of them, men and women, dressed in ragged clothing made from animal skins and patched fabrics. Their hair was long and matted, their bodies dirty and emaciated. They spoke in a guttural language of grunts and clicks, more animal than human. In the center of the clearing was a stone altar, stained with what looked like blood. On it lay a deer, its throat slit, its blood dripping into a bowl below. An older woman with grey hair and a toothless mouth was chanting, her voice rising and falling in a rhythmic pattern. The others joined in, their voices blending into a haunting chorus as they danced around the fire, their movements jerky and trance-like. Around the clearing were several lean-tos, made from branches and hides, providing rudimentary shelter. But what horrified me most were the totems at the perimeter, poles topped with human skulls, their empty eye sockets staring into the darkness. I felt bile rise in my throat As I realized the meat roasting over the fire might not be from the deer alone, I wanted to run, but my journalistic instinct kept me rooted. I took out my camera and snapped photos, careful not to make a sound. That's when I heard a branch snap behind me. I froze, my heart pounding. Slowly, I turned to face a tall man with wild eyes and a scarred face, holding a crude spear pointed at my chest. We stared at each other for a moment before he let out a guttural shout, alerting the others. Within seconds, I was surrounded, their hostile eyes glinting in the firelight. I raised my hands, trying to show I meant no harm. "I'm lost," I stammered. "I just want to find my way back." They didn't seem to understand, or they didn't care. The older woman stepped forward, sniffing me like an animal. She muttered something to the others, and they closed in tighter. Panic surged through me. I pushed past the man with the spear and ran, crashing through the underbrush as their shouts and footsteps followed. Branches whipped at my face and thorns tore at my clothes, but I kept running, my breath ragged. The howls grew louder, echoing through the trees. I tripped over a root and fell hard, pain shooting through my ankle. As I struggled to stand, the spear-wielding man loomed over me, his weapon raised. But then, the older woman appeared, grabbing his arm and speaking sharply. He hesitated, lowering the spear. She knelt beside me, her intense gaze locking onto mine. She placed a hand on my forehead, and a strange warmth spread through me. To my shock, she spoke in broken English. "You go, not come back. Tell no one." I nodded frantically, too scared to speak. She stood and motioned for the others to back away. The man with the spear glared but obeyed. I got to my feet, testing my sore ankle, and limped away, half expecting them to change their minds. They didn't. They watched me disappear into the trees, their eyes burning into my back. I stumbled through the forest, my mind racing. Who were these people? How had they survived like this? And why had they let me go? After what felt like hours, I burst onto the Appalachian Trail, recognizing the white blazes on the trees. I sprinted toward my camp, collapsing inside my tent, exhausted and terrified. I waited until dawn, too afraid to move. When morning light filtered through the canopy, I packed up and drove out of the park, not stopping until I was back in civilization. Back in my apartment, I tried to resume normal life, but the experience haunted me. The images of those feral faces, the skulls, and the chase played on a loop in my mind. I uploaded my photos to my computer, staring at the evidence of what I'd seen, wondering if anyone would believe me. I tried telling my friends, but they laughed it off, saying I'd imagined it or exaggerated for my blog. Even when I showed them the photos of the carvings, the cabin, the camp, they dismissed them as fakes or tricks of the light. But I knew what I'd seen. Then the strange occurrences began. At night, I heard whispers in my apartment, speaking that guttural language. Shadows moved just out of sight. One morning, I found a small bone on my pillow, a human finger bone, clean and polished. Another day, feathers were arranged in a pattern on my windowsill. Once, I found a muddy handprint on my bathroom mirror, though my doors were locked and there were no signs of entry. Desperate, I posted my story on the forum, where I'd first learned about the feral people, including the photos. To my surprise, I received a private message from someone claiming to be a relative of Dennis Martin. They wrote, "I saw your post, and I believe you. My cousin Dennis was taken by them. We found his shoe near a clearing with similar markings to what you described. The authorities wouldn't listen, but I know the truth. Be careful. They don't let go easily." Attached was a photo of a child's shoe, worn and dirty, with symbols carved into the sole, identical to those I'd seen in the forest. My blood ran cold. The feral people had been active for decades, perhaps centuries. I tried contacting the sender, but they never responded. It was as if they'd vanished, just like Dennis. I reached out to park rangers, but they were skeptical, saying there were no records of missing persons matching the journal I'd found, and the area I described wasn't known for such activity. Then, one night, I woke to find the older woman from the camp standing at the foot of my bed, her eyes glowing in the dark. She didn't speak, just stared, her presence oppressive. I was paralyzed with fear. After an eternity, she turned and walked through the wall, vanishing. The whispers stopped, and the strange occurrences ceased, but I knew they were still out there, watching. I contacted Mountain Ghost from the forum, who warned that the feral people were guardians of an ancient secret, predating even the Native Americans. By intruding, I'd awakened something that should have remained dormant. Last night, I saw one of them standing across the street from my apartment, motionless, watching my window. When I blinked, he was gone. I don't know if I'm going crazy or if they're really following me, but I can't live like this. I'm going back to the Smokies to confront them, to find out what they want. If you're watching this, believe me, the feral people of Appalachia are real, and they're not just in the mountains. They're everywhere, waiting. If you don't hear from me again, you'll know why.